Welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to be talking about planning, the planning process, the different types of plans, and what exactly planning is. As a recap, we are looking at the management process as a whole. And so, one of those four components of a manager and a manager's job is planning. And while this is looked at in a circular method and it is sometimes linear in its organization, where we would see planning at the very beginning, it is important to notice that all of these aspects can be done at similar times and can be redone throughout the process. So we don't want to think of planning as like a one-time thing we do maybe at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of a business. Planning is something that should be ongoing and should be adjusted as we go. So to start off, what is planning? Planning is the process of setting objectives and determining how you're going to accomplish them. Okay, that is basically the formal way of saying that I'm going to put some forethought into something. I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to say, this is what I want to accomplish. I'm going to name it. And then I'm going to put steps into place that are going to get me there. Okay. I'm not going to just wing it. I'm not going to just hope for the best. Okay. This is forethought and setting things up with a specific end goal in mind. Okay. The benefits of doing this are that it often improves our focus and our flexibility. If you're like me and making decisions can be really difficult, having an objective that you're moving towards gives you a framework to help make a decision. So when you are maybe doing a pros and cons list or you are trying to decide, that's going to give you the framework. Does this get me to my goal faster or more efficiently than the other option? And that's going to help us move a little bit easier. Okay. This can look at the needs of the customer and help us give us that framework that we are necessary. Okay. It also provides us with a direction and orientation for the actions that we are going to be making going forward. Okay. So similarly to when you're trying to make a decision, those actual actions when you're going forward in the moment, it helps give you some direction for those as well. It also, in larger businesses, helps improve coordination between our departments. Okay. So oftentimes businesses are set up where you're going to have an accounting department, you're going to have a marketing department, you might have a team that's working on this particular product, a team that's working on this particular product. And the bigger a company gets, the harder it is to kind of coordinate between them. But having an end goal in mind will hopefully keep everybody on the team working in the same direction. Okay. It also helps improve our time management. So you can think of this one on a smaller scale in your own life. Okay. If your goal is to get a certain grade in a course, okay, and you are, you're getting home and you're trying to decide what you're going to do, you're probably going to make choices that involve preparing for an assessment or managing your time better when you're able to set priorities and manage your time. Okay. And it helps improve control also. Control is its own section of management that we're going to get to, but when we do get to it, you're going to see that all of these assessments that we do under the control section all come out of, were we able to meet the plan that we set? So it's really difficult to do that final section without having a plan in place. All right, so what are the different types of plans? In businesses, in any organization, as we've talked about before, an organization can be a for-profit business, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. There's lots of different plans that we make, and these might be the types of plans you even make in your personal life. The first characteristic of a plan is its time frame. So is it a short or a long range plan? Short range plans are usually 1 year or less. These are things that we want to accomplish completely done within a year. All right. There's kind of a midsection here. We call it an intermediate range plan. That would be kind of 1 to 2 years. And then long range plans are anything that are 3 or more years into the future. Okay. We don't generally only have one. We often generally have a long range plan. That's kind of our overall objective. And then we might have a number of short range plans that are going to be like stepping stones to get us to our long range plans. Okay. It is important to note that with long range plans, it is very difficult to stay motivated towards them without kind of those short range plans in place that are going to get you there. Okay. That's generally because long range plans are really, really ambitious. And they can seem so far away and so hard to reach that it's harder to get to. So for example, if you were to set a plan that like, oh, I want to, run a marathon in 3 years from now. Okay. That's going to be really difficult first thing in the morning when your alarm's going off, being like, you need to go outside and do a 10-minute run. It's like, oh, it's 3 years from now. It's not a big deal. But if you were to have that long range plan, but then set your short range plans, okay, by the end of this month, I need to be able to run this distance. By the end of this 3 months, I need to be able to run this distance. By the end of the month, I need to be able to run this distance. Then it's less likely to procrastinate because you've set out those steps that you need to make to get to the long range, but then you can just focus on that step that's right there. And that's a better thing to be able to compare yourself to. Okay. The next one for a business organization would be if they are strategic plans or operational plans. So a strategic plan is an overall directive for the company. A lot of people assume that these would be long range. That's not necessarily the case. It's more about who is involved in the plan. Okay, so a strategic plan is something that the whole organization is working towards. Okay, so an example would be at IKEA. Their strategic plan that they set out about 4 years ago now was just simply a sustainable everyday. Okay, so they were trying to embed sustainability into every aspect of their business. That is their one big kind of overarching plan that they have. Okay, it's going to be comprehensive. Like I said, it's generally going to be long range because it takes a long time, but that's not the defining feature of it. The defining feature of it is it's something that every single department, every single person in an organization is going to be working towards it. Okay, and for strategic plans, we do need to allocate resources towards it, right? We often can't make a long range plan, but then not commit anything to it. My marathon plan, I can't say I want to run a marathon, but then not commit any of my time or energy or money into the materials that I might need to reach that. Okay. And I would also need to have my action framework or my short range plans that are going to get me there. Okay. Strategic plans are made by our top management. They are an overarching decision that is made, and then we are going to see that trickle down through our middle managers and our low level managers, who are then going to kind of make those actual specific decisions about how this is going to be implemented in the business. Whereas an operational plan is how we are going to implement our strategic plans. Okay, so these are going to be very specific plans. These are generally going to be specific to an operational area within the business or a team. So that might be like a production team, a marketing team, a human resources team. Depending how the business is set up, it might be this product team, this product team, this product team. They're all going to implement this differently, but these are going to be the actual concrete plans that we are looking at. So for example, for our overarching sustainability strategic plan that IKEA put into place, we saw operational plans. So we saw production putting plans in place to start using recycled materials and to reduce the packaging waste that might be available and to reduce their use of plastic. We saw marketing putting a plan into place on how they're going to market the strategic plan of sustainability, and also move into more like digital spaces that don't have an environmental impact, and a number of different areas. So every area of the business is going to kind of implement this a little bit differently. And I'll link the slide so that you can check out some of these commercials that talk about the different operational plans that they put into place. All right. So again, plans long and short range, operational and strategic. They also can be single use plans or standing use plans. So a single use plan is something that is made for a specific situation where you're generally only going to use it once. Okay, because we are setting a goal for a specific situation, as I mentioned before, we need to have resources set aside for it. And generally, this is in the form of a budget. We could have one of three different types of budgets that are allocated for this, okay? The first one is what's called a fixed budget. So each department might have a specific amount. So in IKEA's example, okay, we want overarchingly, strategically, to be more sustainable. Production, you're getting $1 million to allocate to this. Marketing, you're getting $500,000 to allocate towards this. So as those organizations are making those operational plans on how they're going to implement this, they know that this is how much money they have. It doesn't matter if, sales go crazy because of what's happened, they're not going to get any more. Whereas a flexible budget is going to change based on the level of activity. So if we are going to give, sales, our sales team, a certain budget that they're going to be able to use, we might give it to them based off of their engagement, right? So you're going to get $3 more for every customer that you're able to get in. So if they do the job really well, if they implement it really well, they're going to get more of a budget to be able to allocate it, which then helps finance and our top level managers monitor it, right? They know that money isn't going to just be spent with no benefit involved. Okay. The most kind of harder one to get your head around is what's called a zero-based budget. Okay. So what we do here is we allocate resources to a project or activity as if it were brand new. Single-use plans are generally brand new, okay? But if in a lot of businesses, they don't actually use single-use plans for their department budgets, okay? So for example, at a school, each department, your math department, your science department, your business department, are given a certain amount of the overall budget every single year, okay? And it's kind of, if you wanted more, you'd have to go and talk to them about it, but you're given that. Whereas in a zero-based budget, it's assumed that at the beginning of every year, that's going to zero out. You're going to get $0. And if you want to buy anything, you need to justify how that is meeting that plan, that strategic goal, that operational goal that the single-use plan is for. Okay, so, and this is trying to kind of alleviate some of that waste. So on a single-use plan, when we say we're using it only once, it could be that it is a specific special project. It could also be the way that the business sets itself up, wanting each year for their strategic plan to be a brand new thing that's going to happen for the organization. Okay. Along with the budget, we also are going to want to have a project schedule. Okay. And this is going to be the timelines for when we're going to meet these goals that have been set out to us. Okay. So that might be, when is new software going out? When is an advertising campaign happening? That's going to kind of be the coordination between the departments. All right. For a standing use plan, and you can see I have the little video clip here from The Office if you're an Office fan here. A standing use plan is something that is in place that we're going to use over and over and over again. Okay. Generally, these are not going to be strategic plans. These are not going to be overarching directions. These are going to be things that get repeated in an organization on a regular basis. And so it doesn't make sense to allocate the resources in the mental space to change that plan all of the time. And so the biggest example for that would be your plan for if there's a fire or if there's an emergency. Okay. We do drills, we practice what the plan is. Everybody knows what the plan is in place. And if it ever happens, we go ahead with it. There's no point in every year reinventing the wheel on this one. Okay. These are often called policies more so than plans that a business has in place. Okay. But they are broad guidelines for making certain types of decisions and implementing certain action plans that exist. So most organizations have standing use plans for things like having to lay somebody off, for things that might happen in a workplace like sexual harassment claims. A lot of places have these as dress codes, or what happens if somebody is late, or as I mentioned, if there is a fire. Okay. People often call them rules or procedures more so than plans, but they very much are plans, right? If we remember what a plan is a set of actionable items that are put in place to get us towards a goal. Okay. If the goal is laying somebody off, what are we going to do to get there? If the goal is having everybody dressed in a certain way, what are we going to do to get there? If the goal is getting everybody out of a building safely when there's fire, what are we going to do to get there? Okay. So even if you're hearing these other terms, policies, rules, procedures, it still is a plan in its core. Okay. Generally, in organizations and businesses, we are going to find these in what we call an employee handbook or a manual. So flipping from us being the business people to us being employers, as young people that are going to be employed, it's really, really important that organizations give you this information and that it's very, very clear to you. So nowadays it's generally an online handbook or manual that's there, but make sure that it's given to you. Make sure that you save it somewhere so you know where to go to, so you know what the plan is when something like this happens, especially if it's a violation at your workplace. You need to know who you're reporting this to so that it can be dealt with really, really quickly. Okay. And as I mentioned, what we do in the case of emergency drills. Okay. What's interesting is that if you actually look at the standing use plans for different organizations, you can learn a lot about the values of that organization and the way that they go about planning and leading by the policies that they have in place. So to start us off, I have as the example here for you, GM, they're a car manufacturer, their dress code policy. So it used to be a 10-page document, and you did read that correctly. So if you were hired by GM, whether it was in the office, whether it was in sales, whether it was in marketing, whether it was in production, you were given a 10-page document. That is the only thing in that document is dress codes. Okay? It outlined very specifically what appropriate attire was for every single position, every single situation that existed. It often included gender-based situations as well in that dress code that was there. Okay, what could that tell you? Okay, if I were to walk into a business or an organization and be handed a 10-page document, I know that those managers are likely not leaders. And we're going to get into that when we get into our leadership manual. I understand that those people in position of power that are being made as managers are operating out of a position of fear and operating out of a position of control. What they are telling me is that they don't respect me. They don't trust their employees to make professional decisions about where they are at. It's not a problem to have a dress code. Most organizations do have a dress code. But you can see their need to tell you specifically and control what's on your body in every situation tells you that they are leading out of a position of fear. And it tells you that they don't necessarily trust you to manage that way. And at that time, when this was the dress code, that was how management worked. We had a lot of middle managers that were in place. We had a lot of people looking over other people's shoulders. We're not giving trust to employees. We're not giving trust to lower level managers. Very much an control environment. That's not necessarily bad. Some people like working in those environments. They always know what's going on. But I, as an employee, would know what that means going in based off of the way that they're making their plans. Eventually, GM's top managers came up with a new strategic plan, and that new strategic plan was to empower employees and managers. Okay, they realized that they were spending a lot of money having people in these positions of authority, but not giving them the roles and responsibilities that they should be doing. We're wasting money when we're doing this. And so they wanted to give the power back to these people. They wanted to say, we trust you as professionals. We want you to make that. And so as part of a strategic plan saying we want to empower employees, it kind of maybe doesn't ring immediately in most people's mind to be like, well, change the dress code. But that is one of those operational plans that we would need to look at. Let's change the standing use plan that we have. So their new policy can be summed up in 2 words, which is dress appropriately. Okay. So by having this, and they give examples of some scenarios for, maybe new employees or people that aren't 100% sure what that means. We know there's all sorts of elements of cultural and backgrounds and things that come into what people perceive to be appropriate. But the overall dress code, the mandatory policy that's in place, the standing use plan that's in place is simply dress appropriately. Okay. And so what we are doing is we're making managers be accountable to take a more active role to lead their team. By what they do is going to determine what the other people do around them. Okay, these people that are being paid to be a manager are going to have the ability to have these conversations. We don't need it in a formal document if it's there. Okay. Also, if you as a manager can't handle the responsibility of enforcing a dress appropriately, okay, do we want you to be making other important managerial decisions in our business and our organization? Okay. Are you deserving of that wage we're giving you as somebody that's making decisions for our organization? If that's not something that you're going to be able to handle. All right. So policies, planning. I know a lot of the times when you hear it as a student, it's about like, how are you going to get your assignment in on time? And all of these policies and all of these steps should be used for that. But you can see how it gets so much bigger than that when you get to an organization. All right, so those are the different types, but how do we actually do it? How do we actually go about setting a new plan, whether it's single use or standing, into place? All right, there is 5 steps to this process. Okay, so the very first thing that you need to do is you need to define your objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? Okay, you could call that goal setting, whatever you want to be. What is that end objective? I want to run a marathon. We want to empower our managers. We want our business to be more sustainable. It's usually very short and sweet. Okay, 2, before you go ahead making an action plan, you need to look backwards a little bit. I need to say, if this is my goal, where am I in relation to that? Right? Because I could sit here at my computer and say, okay, I want to run a marathon in a year or 2 years time. Okay. And so I'm going to go online and I'm going to find this like plan of how to run this marathon. Okay. And it's going to have these step by steps. Day 1, do this. Day 2, do this. Day 3, do this. And then I might get outside on day 1 and be like, oh, it says to just walk for 5 minutes. Like, I can already run a 5K. Okay. If I don't determine where I am in relationship to my objectives, I might be partway down the path. And the plan that I set for myself doesn't make any sense. Or the reverse could be true. The plan that comes out might not take into account some things that exist in my life as of right now. Oh, actually, at the moment, my leg is broken and I'm in a wheelchair, or a number of other things that might be in place. Okay, so pick the end point, the goal, figure out where I am on the spectrum as of right now. Okay, then we need to do our best to anticipate any future events that might be along this path. So again, I can already run a 5K. I'm going towards a marathon. This is looking pretty good. I think I'm going to be able to meet my goal. Okay. What might be in here that might happen? Oh, the Christmas holidays are coming up. That's big for my family. We generally travel. I'm probably not going to be able to train for those 2 weeks. So not only is that not time going forward, but it actually might be some time going back. This big significant thing is happening in my life that we can't commit to this, or all of our resources will be going to this. I don't have the money to buy these resources right now. Okay. So where are we going? Where are we starting? What in the middle might be kind of getting in the way that either speeds us up or slows us down? Okay. Then we need to make plans. We need to make multiple plans. And this is the step that kind of messes with a lot of the students, because they make one plan and then their alternatives in their brain are if this one doesn't work. And that's not actually what we want. We want you to make multiple different plans to get where you're going. Okay, sit down and make a few different ways to get there. Okay, I could do it by training outside. I could do it by using a different training program that actually used like full body fitness that isn't just running. I could do it, again, figuring out multiple different ways to get to your end goal. Okay, need to be in place. Why? Because our first instinct on how to get to an end goal may not be the best. And if we are like, we obviously have to try this first one, and then it's only if it fails that we'll try something else, we may be wasting resources. Okay, so especially in an organization, you generally are going to have multiple people come up with multiple different alternatives of how we're going to get where we're going. Because again, think of what some of these objectives are: being more sustainable. Okay, so one person might be working on how we're going to use recycled materials to make our new furniture. One person might be looking at packaging. One person might be looking at something completely different, like the energy in the factories or not doing as much transportation. There's multiple different ways to get to this big end goal. We need multiple plans on how we're going to get there. All right, and then step number 5 is choosing the best one. Looking at where we're trying to go, where we're at, all those first 3 steps, what's happening in the way, look at those plans and say, okay, which is the best one? Okay, and then do it. And then check in as you go. All right. So those are the 5 steps that we're going to do. For step number 1, for defining your objectives, okay? It's really important that your objectives are both very specific and that they are measurable. Why? Because we don't know if we met them if they're not. If my objective is to be happier 2 months from now, well, that might feel like a really great thing to want. How am I going to know if I met that? How am I going to know if what the things are doing works? What is happiness? How am I measuring that when I get to my end date? And again, it's not a problem if we get to our end date and we haven't met our plan, but we need to know if we have or not so that we can make adjustments. Okay, so what does that look like? Okay, I'm going to carve out this amount of time for things that I enjoy. I'm going to be getting this many hours of sleep. I'm going to, I don't know, maybe there's a scientific way, this level of cortisone in my body. Okay, our objectives have to be something that is measurable. Okay, and to do this, we often use the analogy of SMART goals. Probably by this point in your schooling, you have heard this before. Okay, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Okay, which really does encompasses everything that we talked about. Okay, specific being very detailed of what that actual goal is. Next is that it is measurable. You can put basically like a number on it, a yes or no, a checkbox, something like that at the end. Talking about the end, that timely, what is that endpoint that we're going for? And then achievable and realistic looks like, is it within your power to accomplish it? Okay. And can you realistically achieve it with the resources that you have? Okay. So achievable is talking about something like, I'm not going to say I want to run a marathon on the moon because that's not really achievable at this point in life. But realistic could be, even running a marathon in general, right? Maybe I don't have the time that's available to allocate for this right now in the time that I have left and the physical state that I am in right now. All right. So when we set out those goals, we want them to be SMART goals. And the biggest thing I'm going to be looking at, even if you can't define all of these areas, is that you are going to be able to measure if you got there. And when are you going to be measuring it? All right. So for some examples, a lot of students tell me that their goal is going to be to do better next year. That's not a good objective. Okay. It's not measurable. Okay. A better objective for a business might be to increase sales next year. Okay. So what is being better? What does better look like for this business? It's getting higher sales, but that's still not really a good goal. Okay, because even though, yes, it's measurable, are we honestly happy with one additional sale? Because that's more, right? Okay, so our best objective would be to increase sales next year by 35%. We've put a number on it. All right. Again, for my student support goal, I need to improve my grades. I hear this all of the time, unfortunately. That's not going to be your plan, no matter how detailed you put it. It's probably not going to be successful because that first step of an objective is not going to be there. Okay, so a better objective might be I want a better final grade in all my courses, right? Because technically improving your grades at any point in the year, if your grade went up, you'd have met that goal. And I don't think that's what most people mean. They mean on their report cards. So that's your final grade. But a best objective would be I want to improve my final grade in all my courses by 10% higher than their midterms. So I want to be seeing them going up over the time. Or it might be for a specific course. Okay, and then you're going to be able to measure that. All right, that was step 1. Once we have our objective met, then we need to figure out where we are in relation to that. So we need to evaluate where we currently are. If we're going with your goal of improving your grade, what is your current grade? My current grade is a 60%. Okay, so a 10% increase is getting up to a 70%. Okay, then I'm going to analyze my strengths and weaknesses. Why am I currently getting a 60% in this course? Okay, I'm not hitting my due dates. I'm not giving the amount of time that's needed. I'm not reading the rubric in advance to know what is required. Okay, these are maybe my weaknesses. What are my strengths? My strengths are my enthusiasm for the course. I do actually really like the material. Or my strength might be I'm really good at like making digital pictures versus writing. Okay, and so we're going to do that internal analysis of where we are at, okay, to make a plan going forward. I really love this example here because there was an organization that I was a part of that said that they wanted to increase their sales by 35%. But when we did this next step, okay, they were selling absolutely everything they made. So most people, when they say we want to increase sales by 35%, we immediately are like, okay, give the resources to marketing, give the resources to sale. We need to get more customers. For this organization, we didn't need more customers. We were selling everything we had. We couldn't keep up with what we had. So actually what we needed, what our weakness was, what we needed to be allocating our resources to was being able to make more, to be able to produce more. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about our weaknesses and our strengths. Okay. And then before, I know at this point we want to jump right in, we want to make that plan, we want to figure out how we're going to get there. We need to take a minute and anticipate future events that are going to be coming up. Okay. So right, again, as we talked about, there is a break coming up. That could be an opportunity for us to work on our course, or we can also look at what we normally do during that time. Okay, maybe we're heading into a really busy competitive season for you. So now you're not only going to be doing school, but you're going to be balancing school and your sports that you're going to be doing. For my business in this situation where they want to be producing more, okay, is there possibly legal regulations that are going to be in place that are going to make it hard to increase? Is there a possible economic downturn or seasonal demand changes that are coming up for that product that are going to make it harder to sell more, right? If our goal is to sell more snow shovels, but it's May or it's March and we know that we're about to have a season, then, we need to take that into account in how we're going to make our plan going forward. All right. Then we have all the information. We're going to make our plans. Okay. We are going to start. It says list and evaluate. You're going to write out all of the courses of actions. And all of the courses of actions have to get us to our goal. I've had students when they do these activities before, like put out a course of action and they'll be like, we're not using it because it doesn't get us to a goal. Then that's not a course of action to consider. You have to make sure that every course of action gets you to your goal. Okay, so one course of action is to hire more employees that are going to use the machines we already have to produce more. Another course of action might be buying new machinery and using the employees that we already have. Another course of action could be actually opening up a whole separate facility to be increasing the production. Another course of action could be franchising, right? There's lots of different ways to get where we need to go. Okay. And as you're making these plans, you need to take into consideration the strengths and weaknesses that you had before. You need to put safeguards in place. You need to think about some of those things that are coming up. So if, for example, we were to happen to, move forward and there would be a holdup on producing this new facility, then we would do this or this. Okay. So you need full thought out plans to get from where we are right now through the possible things that would happen to the objective that we want to end up at. That work. And then do another one and then do another one. Okay. And then you're going to look at the three of them and say, with the amount of time, with the amount of resources, with the amount of expertise, with the goal that we have in mind, which one is going to be the best option for us? And we're going to choose it. And that's going to become our plan. All right. So it's not like we have like three different ideas that we kind of just think about, pick one and then make a plan for it. No. Make the full plans of the three and then highlight the one that you're going to do. All right. And then finally, we need to do it. Okay, we need to set that ball in action. We need to start going on the plan. And this is where we might make what we call a contingency plan. If we get halfway along and this comes up, what are we going to do instead? And that could be diverting into one of the other plans we created, or it might not be. It might be something different. Okay. As we move along, we want to be having those little checkpoints that we go in. What are the actual results? How are we going to be evaluating? How are we going to know if we're going to be on that plan? And how would we fix that along the way? All right. So in our example of how we're going to improve our grades, okay, some of your fully thought out plans and alternatives might have been to get a tutor that you're going to meet with monthly or weekly. It might be setting out dedicated time in a quiet, free place where you're going to be completing your homework and doing your plan. It could be improving certain skills. So spending time improving my note taking and my studying skills and then implementing them into the course. Okay, so those are full 3 thought out plans. I'm then going to pick my first one or my best one that I think. So I'm going to dedicate 1 hour every Wednesday night to be doing the work for this course. Okay, that's my plan. I'm going to implement it. Okay, how am I going to implement it? I'm going to put an alarm in my phone. I'm going to block out that on my schedule. Okay, but then as we were saying, what are those checkpoints going to be? Okay, after 3 weeks, weeks, I'm going to look back and say, is my grade improving? Is this enough time? Do I need to make it 2 hours instead of 1 hour? Am I often canceling it because this other event happened to get scheduled on the same day? Do I need to change the date? So we're putting those safeguards in advance, because when we get in the thick of it, those might not be things that we're going to notice or that we're going to do. So I know that is a lot of information, but it is really a really important skill that we have, that we are able to make effective plans. And all effective plans, whether it is something very simple like planning a party or improving your grades in school, all the way up to full-on strategic plans of multi-million-dollar businesses, go through this same process. And so it's really important that we are practicing this and that we are understanding this. And so our next steps are to go ahead and make a plan using these steps. All right, we'll see you in the next lesson.